This is Andy Purewal for Boxing News. I'm joined by trainer Shane McGuigan here in Saudi Arabia. Shane, good to see you. How's
Nice to
life
see you, Andy.
treating you?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Got out on the early hours of Thursday, so last one, like sort of last minute flight at night time because I've got to look after Chris Billam-Smith in his pursuit to defend his world title, and Caroline Dubois is also going to be announced to be on that card as well. So we've got a busy gym back home, and I couldn't come out too early. But Craig's in great spirits, and looking forward to tomorrow night. It's come around real quick.
Craig does seem to be in very good spirits. Obviously, he's had his back and forth with Willie Hutchinson this week. Has that kind of added a fire to the belly almost? Has that made it a bit personal for him now going into tomorrow night?
Yeah, I think so. I think he always knew what to expect. You know, I've known Willie Hutchinson for a while now, and I think he's a good, talented fighter. I think he's one of them guys that, you know, he likes to sort of try and rev you up and rile you up before the fight, get under your skin. And I don't think that works with an Iceman like Craig Richards. You know what I mean, someone that's he just turned 34 years of age, calm. He's been in these situations for a long time. He's had big fights like Buatsi. He's had respectful fights like Bivol. He's had back and forth with people like Shakan Pitters that, you know, he's in the away corner. Throw it back even to Jake Ball and things like that. You got people trying to like get in your ear and get in your head. So he's had a lot of experience, and I think it doesn't really change his perspective on like how he's going to approach the fight, but it will definitely give him a little bit extra hunger.
This seems to be the one fight when I ask people about it, Shane, that they kind of have a heavy favourite, and that's your man Craig Richards. Why do you think it is that people are favouring
I
Craig
don't like that as a, you know, because we have to understand that this is Queensberry's pick. You know, this is their pick. They are genuinely very confident in their man. Willie Hutchinson got knocked out against Lennox Clark when he was dead at super middleweight. I think he's naturally he was 81 kilo as an amateur, and then he tried to boil down, and I think his best performances have all been at light heavyweight. Even when he was with Domingo, he was weighing 12-12, which is just under the light heavyweight division, stating that he was going to be a super middle, but then going, you know, 12-10, things like that, like going down. He was actually even heavier than the light heavyweight division, and then they're saying that he's going to go down to super middleweight. And the one or two times he actually did super middleweight, he just looked a shell of himself. So we've got to prepare for the best Willie Hutchinson. We know that he's suited to 12-7 as a light heavyweight division. I think he holds a better shot there. I think his energy is higher. I think he punches harder there. So yeah, we can't take our eye off the ball. But I understand why people would side with Craig, and I obviously side. We like this fight for ourselves, but we also respect Willie Hutchinson as a fighter, as a challenge that we've got in front of us as well, because it's not just going to be some walk in the park. This whole card stacked from top to bottom of 50-50 fights, and you know, they're the promoter's pick, and they wouldn't be picking him if they weren't confident.
Greg said to me the other day that with you in the corner, he has no doubt he can achieve world title status at some point in the near future. We know obviously the titles are kind of tied up with Bivol Beterbiev, depending again what happens with Bivol and Malik on Saturday night. But what is kind of the plan beyond Saturday? Get you out of the way, get the victory. How do you see his career aligning beyond that?
Yeah, I think just as you stated, you know, Bivol's now going to be getting a defence of his title, so that will keep the governing bodies quite happy. Beterbiev meniscus tear. I don't know how long or how extensive that recovery period is, but you know, the intent. You just flicked it off your face and onto mine. Yeah, I don't know the extent of that recovery process, but I would imagine that is always the target for those two to box, and whether that's in September, October, or even December, the Tyson Fury-Usyk 2 card, you know, it's going to go on at the tail end of this year, which means that, you know, we want to be out again at least once, and then in the early 2025 as well. So we're probably 2 fights after this one away from challenging for a world title, and I think the most important thing is that he's in competitive fights, he's working his way up the rankings, and he gets a chance and a crack at the world title. So Buatsi is a great one. You know, we would love to to try and roll it back and box Buatsi. I believe that he could box better. I believe that Buatsi could box better. I think it would be a very exciting fight, but it would be one that I would really, as you know, looking after Craig, I'd relish that opportunity for him.
Moving away from all things Craig Richards, but just sticking with the theme of this card, some fights I want to get your thoughts on. Deontay Wilder, Wilder-zhang, divided opinion.
Yeah.
Has it divided yours?
I think you've got to go on recent form, and I think the recent form wasn't great for either of them, but it was a lot better for Wilder-zhang. I think, you know, he lacked fitness, he lacked stamina. You know, no discredit to Joseph Parker, but it just looked like he just didn't. He probably looked at BoxRec and thought, I've knocked out Joe Joyce, who's knocked out Joseph Parker. This is just a touch. I'm going to beat this guy up and stop him. And you know, the fact of the matter is what beat Joseph Parker that night against Joe Joyce was just the pace and the intensity of the fight, and that's he overwhelmed and beat him up and stopped him. And Zhang was on the way to doing that, but just ran out of steam. But in terms of his shot selection, he didn't look like he was a completely different fighter as Wilder did. He just looked like he had no answers to Parker's movement. He looked like he never was setting his feet. It looked terrible, if you ask me. For a guy that sets his feet, sets things up, is patient. He was reacting to every feint. He just didn't look right. And I don't know. Sometimes fighters, when they get coaches in the corner, like, they just try to implement everything that the coach is telling them, and that doesn't work a lot of the time. And I think Malik Scott is all wrong for Deontay Wilder. I don't think he's like he's got this playbook of all these skills that he wants Wilder to do, whereas the most important thing for Wilder is how to set up the right hand, and he's forgot about that. So I would be leaning towards Zhang. Wouldn't be surprised if Wilder catches him, but I'd be leaning towards Zhang.
You obviously have your old heavyweight charge on the card as well, Daniel Dubois. He had a very good win, had to come through some tough rounds against Jarrell Miller more recently. Coming into this one with Hrgovic, can you see him having his hand raised at the end of the night?
I can definitely see that, and I can see it the other way as well. I think Daniel gives the jab too often. He gives his opponent the jab because he's expecting a right hand, and I think Hrgovic is very sharp on his straight shots, and he can push people back. Even big heavyweights, he can sort of nudge them back. And I believe that Hrgovic would train hard. I think Daniel's trained extremely hard for this as well. He knows the challenge and the fact that he's genuinely on paper probably an underdog, which he's not used to being. So, you know, I think it's a very interesting fight, and I would struggle. As I said, I can see an argument for either one winning. I think Hrgovic though does take a great shot, and I can see him probably just being a little bit too sharp with his feet. But I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel catches him.
Fast forward to about 15 days' time, Shane. Obviously, you mentioned the rematch earlier on. Chris Billam-Smith, Richard Riakporhe. How different of a fight do we see this time out compared to what we did those years ago?
Yeah, it's going to be like Richard's got better, and I think Chris has got better as well. I think the two of them are improved. They've got the experience. Riakporhe had a good win over the likes of Tommy McCarthy before going in. He'd had an acid test against Sam Hyde before going into that fight with CBS, and he was kind of on better momentum. Chris's best win before that was like Robin Dupree. You know, he was a complete novice at that stage, and I think in recent form Chris has had much better opposition against him, but Riakporhe has improved as well, so it's one of them ones that we've trained incredibly hard for it. We understand the risks, and he's approaching this fight like he's the challenger, like he was against Lawrence Okoli, and I just believe it's going to be a very different fight than the first one. The first one was, you know, Richard trying to hunt him down, trying to look for big shots. I think Richard will try and be a lot cuter this time. I don't think he'll try and load up with his shots. He's got better with his hand defences. And I think Chris on the first fight didn't know how to pace himself, was wasting a lot of energy running around the ring. Didn't back himself to take the fight to Riakporhe until about the 8th round, and it was just too little too late. So it will be interesting to see how both of them get on under the lights, and I think I genuinely believe that we're going to see a career best performance in Chris Billam-Smith.
When people look into this fight and they speak about Richard Riakporhe, they more so lean towards him maybe finding the stoppage. But on the flip side and on your man's behalf, do you think Chris could find his way to a stoppage victory come June 15th?
I definitely think two big men and they can both punch. Chris isn't as big of a puncher, say, on one shot as Richard Riakporhe, but puts them together really well. Is consistent with his power. Doesn't have a big drop off late in fights. You know, and I think, yeah, I could see Chris stopping him.
You mentioned obviously Caroline's going to be announced for that card as well. Is there anything you can let me in on as of yet?
No, not yet. I mean, there's we've been trying to get her on this. Well, we've been trying to work with some governing bodies to sort of make sure that she fights for a good position in the rankings, and she's highly ranked in all of them, and the thing is we don't want to give up any of those rankings just to take a nothing key fight. So we're in against a good challenger, and I think the fight should be announced in the short term future.
There's a sense of maybe frustration looking at the lightweight team, because obviously Katie Taylor's going to fight up at super lightweight next. She's held a lot of those titles within herself for these recent years. Is there a frustration that maybe they're not aligning at this moment in time for Caroline?
Yeah, I don't think Katie Taylor's going back down to 135. I know that she's struggling a bit more at the weight. She's even, she's even having a diet down for 140. So I think they're just doing it as a play to try and slow Caroline's career down, her progress down. But she won't be deterred. She'll continue to progress with her career. She's doing all the things right. She is the best fighter at 135. I believe she's one of the best female fighters on the planet. And when her opportunity comes knocking in big fights like against Katie Taylor or Chantel Cameron or any of these fighters, I think she beats them all.
And obviously you've also got Azim, who had that kind of face-off with Harlem Eubank those months back now. Where do things currently sit with that fight?
Yep, it's all in the works. It's all in the process, and there'll be a date announced soon. So Adam had a little niggle, which was frustrating and unfortunate, but he's only young, and we don't want to train on little injuries. So we had to make sure that we address that. The way that the fight and the structure with Harlem Eubank is organised, I think it's most likely going to go on a big card, and that looks like it could be August, early September. So as soon as I get back from this, Adam's in the gym on Monday, and he's back firing, and we're just going to wait for an announcement. I think it's a great fight for him. Harlem's on good form. He's looked good up until now. Harlem in his fights, he's had some really good little wins and some good stoppages as well. So it's not a walk in the park for Adam, and I think it's a good acid test where it comes. Mentally, he's going to have to stay switched on the whole way throughout that fight. He's also going to have to deal with people like Chris Eubank Sr. and Harlem also believing that they can win, and he hasn't really had that yet, especially with like an English fighter. He's had people like Petr or Poulsen, Enoch Poulsen, believing that they can win, but they're foreign and they're speaking another language, or Aram Fanian as well. He believed he was going to win, but it's not as real as it is with some Brit or a American fighter really shouting at you and revving the fight up. So something he's going to have to deal with, and I think it's this is all part of the process that you need to get over and overcome before getting onto huge fights and big title fights.
Shane, just some fights which have happened recently I want to get your thoughts on. Former charge of yours, Josh Taylor, fell short against Jack Catterall in their rematch last weekend. Just get your thoughts on that fight.
It's hard for me to say, because if anything I say, it's going to be scrutinised and criticised. But if you want my honest opinion, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed to see him box like that. It's like he can still do it all. It's just he can't put those pieces together. He was closing the gap, and he was just not able to find shots. He was getting more and more frustrated. I know he doesn't struggle at the weight. I've had fighters struggling at the weight for years, and he's not one of them ones that struggled at 140. He's just a naturally lean guy, and everyone does a little weight cut, and they'll probably put on a specific amount of weight. I know that weight won't be changed from when he was with me in the gym. So there's a reason he's been talking about going up to 147 but not actually done it, because I know that he doesn't struggle at the weight. But I just think Jack Catterall's a good fighter, but you got to be able to beat people like him, and like switched off far too much, gave him far too many free shots. He just wasn't doing a lot of things that he used to do effortlessly. I think he's just not doing them anymore, and it's sad to see, really.
What would you put down to kind of, it was somewhat of a slow start for Josh. He had a good, I think it was like 7, 8 for 9 for something along those lines. When he started, the tide was turning a bit. What would you put kind of the start for the fight down to?
It's people trying to tell him to box and trying to tell him to like work on specific things and be very selective with certain shots, for instance, and like they'll try and drill combinations or drill things, and as a fight starts a fight, they try and zone in on that. And they overthink it, and next thing you know, after 5-6 rounds, they're well into the fight. They might be 4 or 5 rounds down, and then their instincts kick in, and that's when his instincts kicked in, and he started to win a lot of the rounds. But then he was forcing it too much at that stage, and he was wasting a lot of energy at that stage. And then Catterall got his second wind and won the last couple. So it's just the way he mentally approaches the fight, and I think it's. When you start off as a novice pro and you go through these tests, like that's why a lot of fighters, if they work with myself or if they work with other coaches, doesn't matter who they're working with, at the start of their career, they're getting that rapport. So that fighter and that coach are on the same wavelength, and you're in against fights that you can easily win, but you're still trying this process out. And when they change coach at the top end, in their competitive fights, it's very hard to implement a lot of that because they're in 50-50 fights already, and then it's not natural to them, and that's why a lot of the time you can overthink things and you can lose fights. At the end of the day, most fights at the elite level are won on split decisions, and it's in the balance, and the difference about winning it and losing it is just how you approach things.
Speaking of split decisions, Tyson Fury, Oleksandr Usyk was exactly as you call it. I asked you in an interview at the CBS Riakporhe 2 announcement presser, and you said you could see a split decision, and that's what we got. What did you make of Tyson
I'm not
Fury
a betting man, but I told a few people to bet split decision on Usyk, and I got a lot of screenshots on their betting slips saying.
Did you take a percentage?
No, I didn't take a percentage. Not, the rumours aren't true. Don't take a percentage. So yeah, it was a much better fight, though, than I expected. I thought it would have been. I didn't know that they both had the power to hurt each other. Usyk wasn't as hurt as Fury, but Usyk was still hurt with that uppercut. And I thought Fury, I'll give him his credit, I think he boxed better than I was expected. And it was a lot closer than I thought it would have been a split decision, but it would have been a little bit more one-sided towards Usyk. And when Fury was in his groove, he was doing really, really well. And it's one of them ones, like, yes, he got hurt late on in a fight, and that swung those last, it was the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, the last 4 rounds. If he hadn't got hurt with that shot, would he have won? And that's why the argument's there. And I think I'm genuinely excited about the rematch. I think it's still in the balance.
One of the talking points from that 9th round was, could the referee have jumped in and stopped the fight? In that moment, do you agree with the referee? Or? I
think so. I think, there's a shot that missed Fury, and even though he was buzzed, he still tilted his head. Like, you got to stop the fight when they can't tilt their head on those things. Like, his vision was still there. His legs were all gone, but his vision was still he was still leaning off on shots and using the ropes to sort of sway away from the shots. And I think a referee is the closest person to the action, and they're the ones that know, and they can see in that fighter's eyes if they're able or capable of getting out the way of shots. And I think it was the right decision. The ropes held him up twice, got counted once. So, but either way, it was a swing of the fight, and I think it was a good thing that the fight wasn't stopped, because he's known for his recovery. He's known for his powers of recovery and how he can get up from anything and come back and still be competitive, and it showed.
He's known for his powers of recovery, but one thing which people have kind of suggested is now maybe his punch resistance is fading. Have you started to see his punch resistance?
His punch resistance has always been it's never been his best asset. He's not like Carl Froch, you know, where his punch resistance was always his get out of jail card. You know, he got dropped heavy by Steve Cunningham, who was not a puncher at cruiserweight. So, like, it's just his vision might have gone a little bit in terms of his ability to, like, if you watch that, he was peppering Usyk with silly shots that were not going to hurt him. And then, you know, he was looking down at his head, and then his overhand left just came over the top and buzzed him. So, I think he's been in hard fights with Wilder. Those fights took it out of Wilder, and they took a little bit out of Fury. But, yeah, I don't think his punch resistance is gone. I just think he's always had that air of vulnerability, and that's what makes him exciting, because he's got the ability to go over but also get up and win fights.
Shane, as a trainer yourself, one of the talking points from the night was kind of what was going on in Tyson's corner. What did you make of everything that was happening between obviously Sugar, John and Andi?
Hard for me to comment without getting scrutinised, but I wouldn't have it in my corner, let's put it that way.
Fair enough, Shane. Moving forwards, getting forwards on one other fight on the horizon, Terence Crawford and Israel Madrimov.
Yeah, exciting fight that.
Very good fight. Do you think people are kind of not really giving Madrimov enough credit because they might not know him to more of a casual audience?
Definitely. Crawford. Who's Crawford's best win?
Name-wise, you'd say Spence, but Spence wasn't.
So who do you think his best win is then? Who else? The Russian guy. He was a good fighter. Is he Russian or Belarusian? I think he was. Then he's had Benavidez. He's boxed Postal. Like, throw some names at me.
I'm in the agreement that kind of his 140 run wasn't kind of as difficult to say what Josh Taylor's was to Undisputed.
Agreed.
But
he's looking better at 147.
Yeah.
What's he going to look like at 154? He's got the frame for it. Great timing. Let's be real. Like, everyone knew that Errol Spence. Well, rumours come out straight afterwards that he got badly hurt in sparring. Just dead at the weight. Spence he's also got a detached retina twice. He's been in a car crash. He's had a torrid time. Was he the fresh Errol Spence that was running through the welterweight division? I don't think so.
So Crawford's win versus Porter, maybe his best. Crawford's win versus Porter.
Porter was late on in his career. Kell Brook was late on in his career. Amir Khan was way past his career. I like Terence Crawford. I think he's a fantastic fighter. I think he's one of the best fighters that we've had of this era. Has he boxed somebody that has good feet, like that can, you know, keep it on the outside as well, like where he's had to track them. And I don't know, like Madrimov comes in, he's a bit wild. I don't know if he's going to be the guy to win against Crawford, but it'll be interesting to see how he goes at 154 is all I'm saying. I don't know if his attributes and his punching power will transfer, because he's got great timing. He's not like and it's not a one punch like knockout artist, you know. Holds his power well, but as I said, like, it's knocked a lot of guys out that are in hindsight past it.
One more I'm going to ask you on. I'm on the same night as Chris and Richard in the night over in America, Vegas. We spoke about light heavyweights earlier. David Benavidez moving up to 175 versus Gvozdyk.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how. I mean, Gvozdyk's come back from a long layoff, but you know he got stopped by Beterbiev, but he was competitive in that fight, and he was a very good amateur. He had a great run up until that fight as well, and then just retired. So, be interesting to see how he gets on with Benavidez. I don't think Benavidez is the same puncher that Beterbiev is. He's aggressive and he puts the pressure on. I'm excited about that fight. I really am. I think if Benavidez really just walks through him, you've got to give him the props. But I don't see that happening. I think it's going to be a competitive fight. But Gvozdyk is what? He's 35 now, I think he is. Yeah, I think he's about 35. So, yeah, exciting fight. I think boxing's in a great place. That's what I'm saying about the Crawford. I love Crawford, but also Madrimov is a great fighter. Like, that's a competitive fight, and we can't let that go under the radar, because could it be an upset? I'm not sure, but it's definitely going to be a competitive fight.
We actually had that disappointing news earlier that Tszyu and Virgil Ortiz is not happening
I know,
now.
I heard, yeah.
So
It's disappointing. But why is that? Do we know?
apparently, Tim's cuts from the Fundora fight won't heal up in enough time for him to have enough time to spar, basically.
Oh, okay. And he's been out in Thailand working with his dad as well. So I was, follow his dad on the gram and that, and they were doing a lot of old school Eastern European drills, like Russian drills and stuff. So yeah, it's that's a great fight. I would be excited for when that does get rescheduled. Who wins that one? I think Virgil Ortiz. He's a wrecking machine at 147. Can he do it up at 154? With that style, he's going to get hit a lot. But it seemed like he was getting sick a lot at that 147 weight, and it was like an autoimmune illness, which is most likely just the lack of calories and the intensity of training. That's just always compounding and accumulating in an ill fight or on fight week. And I think him going up to that 154 division will see the best Virgil Ortiz.
Shane, appreciate your interview. Before we finish, I've just remembered, obviously Boxing News have launched 1909, our very own luxury sportswear clothing brand. So we've got you a nice little T-shirt here.
Appreciate it.
Show the audience how lucky you are to receive.
Thank you very much.
There we go.
Boxing News. Good to see the brand still strong. Good people behind it. So good luck to you guys with the apparel.
Appreciate it, mate. And good luck on Saturday night, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you soon.
Cheers, Andy. Thanks, mate.
What's up, man? Cheers, Shane. Thank you.